Hey, what's up? So, I just wrote a blog post about the pros and cons of traditional publishing versus self-publishing, right? So, a lot of authors that I talk to are facing this conundrum, right? And there's a lot of people out there these days who are saying, hey, you should just self-publish your book. It's faster, you get to keep all the proceeds, you don't have to deal with some big company that's making all the decisions for you. And, big publishers don't really do much for their authors anyway, right? A lot of those assumptions are true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't traditionally publish. So I wanted to write this article, and I actually even have a free online course on this topic to kind of go through the pros and cons so people can make really informed decisions about what's best for them. Okay? So let's talk about the reasons that you should traditionally publish. So there's a lot of reasons, but there's really one big one. And that's that it gives you a massive stamp of approval on the fact that your book is worthwhile, right? So a traditional publisher has decided they're going to invest their time and money and resources in publishing your book. That's a big deal. And that's why it's very hard to get a traditional publishing deal. You have to find an agent. It takes months. You have to create a proposal. Sometimes it takes years. You have to go and you have to convince them that your book is marketable, right? But once you get that stamp of approval, it's going to tell a lot of people that your book is legit, right? It's going to tell readers that your book is legit. Readers are going to be like, wow, this is published by X publishing company. That means I should take a look at it, right? But it's also going to convince influencers, right? So you're going to want to go out and do a media campaign for your book. You're going to want to try and book interviews. You're going to want to go out to influencers in your genre and say, hey, would you be willing to share this book with your audiences, right? And you want to convince them that your book is legitimate, right? People are busy, they have limited bandwidth, and they're not going to want to necessarily interview or partner with a self-published author, right? But if you have that traditional publishing stamp of approval, they're going to be much more likely to work with you. And I cannot overstate this. The difference between a traditional publisher and a self-published book when it comes to getting people to interview, promote you, is massive, okay? So that's the biggest reason to go through the trouble of getting your book traditionally published. The other one, is one that people don't like to admit, but it's also, you've passed a test. It's kind of a personal achievement thing, right? You've gone to all this trouble of writing this book. If you get someone to traditionally publish, it really validates you as a writer, and that's important, right? It's not the only thing, it's an ego thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, okay? So those are the two big reasons to traditionally publish, okay? Now, let's talk about the reasons to self-publish your book. So it's really time, money, and creative control. Pretty simple, right? So time. It's much faster to self-publish a book. And that's not necessarily the publishing process itself. That, if you do it right, self-publishing takes roughly the same amount of time that going with a traditional publisher would. Maybe a little faster, but the big difference in time between the two publishing strategies is that you don't have to go through the trouble of creating a book proposal and then seeking an agent and then having that agent go out and seek a publishing deal. That can take 6, 12, 18, 24 months, right? Just to even start the publishing process, okay? So it's a lot faster. If you self-publish your book, you can start tomorrow, okay? So the other thing is money, right? So traditional publishers take a large percentage of your royalties, usually 85 to 90% of your royalties, and that's after the printing costs, okay? So when you're self-publishing, you're gonna get to keep 60% instead of 10 to 15%, right? So if you're self-publishing your book through Amazon, Amazon will still take a cut, but it won't be nearly as big a cut as if you're going with a traditional publisher. So money's a big one. And the last one is creative control. A lot of publishers will have input into what your final product looks like because they've invested in it, right? And they own the copyright to it, right? So they are gonna make input, right? Now, in my experience, that input isn't usually that heavy, but there are plenty of stories out there about publishers who say, hey, eliminate this chapter or rewrite this or do this with this character, right? So if you wanna have total control over the final product, do it yourself. All right, so those are the reasons. You can learn more in the blog post. There's everything I've said here is much more fleshed out. And then also you can take our free online course about whether you should traditionally publish or self-publish. Thank you very much. You can learn about all that at www.launchmybook.com. Thanks for watching. If you want more tips and insights for publishing and promoting your book, subscribe to my YouTube channel here.